Hey everyone, how's it going? So this is going to be a continuation of my last video talking about the Lord Ravager of Amphoreus and how Emporius is essentially Pandora's box or a prison for this Lord Ravager, pretty much confirmed by Herta at this point. This is going to be a continuation of my last video, but what I want to discuss is what three emanators or forces powerful like an emanator is Herta mentioning here? Why are we here? Why did Black Swan want the Trailblazers' help if Amphoreus is a box or prison for a Lord Ravager? What is Erudition's true involvement here? And what force is mysteriously threatening Amphoreus' time loop? And finally, you probably noticed that we're missing some flame chasers here, and there's some Titan core flames we never got to see claimed. I think I know exactly how we're going to be claiming them pretty shortly here. I usually do not like to create direct sequel videos because I don't want to make more homework for you guys to watch, but there's just too much information in my last video to repeat in this video. I will very briefly recap what we went over. If you want more context to it, I recommend watching my last video, but in this video I want to explore why Amphoreus is here. How is it exactly being maintained as a prison to house a Lord Ravager? What are the nuances and other little details we're missing here? So let's quickly recap what I went over in my last video, just the meat and potatoes of what we discussed. Essentially what I did was explained why Amphoreus is in the shape of an infinity logo as a Mobius strip. There are two sets of cycles that keep repeating, two batches of heroes, the ones we know, the Chrysos heirs, and the old version of the Chrysos heirs that are now the current Titans like Calypso, Castris' sister, you get the point. The Lord Ravager has been encased within this memory time loop prison. The Titans act as the bars of that prison, maintaining it and strengthening it. The Black Tide is manifested from the Scepter. Fully is the architect of Amphoreus, but the emanator of Fully is the one that maintains it. Essentially, Fully built the building, but the emanator of Remembrance, who was more than likely Cyrene, is the one that maintains the giant memory loop prison that is Amphoreus. Hence why the Titans refer to Fully as father, but they also mention a mother. The emanator is probably the mother. Herta already mentioned more than one emanator in Amphoreus. And Remembrance is one of the three main paths in Eon, so the math is simple. March 7th, more than likely the same thing to Cyrene as the Flame Reaver is to Fineon. March 7th was abandoned just as an empty husk and shell within Crystal, no conscious or memories of anything. Mem is probably that abandoned consciousness and memory. They sound the exact same, there's obvious similarities. I mean, Mem manifested once we whipped out our camera in front of the Titan of Time. March 7th is probably the physical body of both Mem and Cyrene. Considering we know that the Garden of Recollection and Memo Keepers abandon their mortal bodies, basically become like conscious wisps of memory, it makes sense for an emanator of remembrance to do the exact same, so sticking your body into some condensed crystal makes perfect sense. And it also explains why March 7th is now going back into crystal form, becoming close to her consciousness or memory that initially abandoned the body. The Scepter and the anti-organic equation always manifest the Black Tide. The Black Tide serves a purpose within this memory prison loop, to push humanity to its breaking point, so that the Flame Chasers are forced to claim a core flame, restart the cycle over and over again, and Fineon's always the last Flame Chaser to claim a core flame. Kefali, the world-bearing Titan in every single loop when it restarts, is the first Titan that creates the world in the image of the last world. It carries that memory over. Fineon's always the consistent that's jumping from cycle to cycle, and the Flame Reaver's always the previous Fineon skipping over to now the future or current cycle trying to stop it, murdering Cyrene, starting Fineon on his journey again to be the big hero, and on it goes. From Fineon's leaked gameplay in 3.4, the fact that he's going to be a playable character, his path is destruction, the Flame Reaver references, it is pretty apparent that he is the emanator of destruction, that is being imprisoned in this box, as Herta puts it. And that is essentially it. Again, if you want more of the details, I go into great depth in my last video. Those are the main points you need to understand though. What I want to discuss now is, well, for one, why did Black Swan bring us here? If this is a loop, what's the problem? Like, why do we need to be here? This is kind of important, and I think I might have an answer to this. And two, I want to discuss what this prison actually is. Are these characters actually real? Are they physically here? Because that's actually what I find most fascinating about Amphoreus. In my last video, I made the comparison that Emporius is kind of like Doctor Strange with Dormammu, trapping this demon-like deity within the same minute to relive the same moment over and over again as a prisoner. It's a very genius way to entrap somebody much more powerful than you through the use of time manipulation. Emporius is very similar, but it's actually more complex, because Fineon is a part of the cycle. So essentially, as a Lord Ravager, he is contributing to his own imprisonment. But do I think all these characters are real? Yeah, I do. Lord Ravagers definitely are powerful enough to warrant this level of contingency. Black Swan Herda, everyone's worried about the Lord Ravager unleashing their fury, their destruction, their power. We know next to nothing about the Lord Ravagers of Honkai Star Rail's universe because everywhere they go, they destroy everything in their wake. There is very rarely survivors to even tell the tale. So trapping one within a memory loop is genius, but what I think is even more genius is I think all of these memories are actually Fainon's. I think Fully actually took this Lord Ravager, fragmented them in half, trapped them within a time loop, but the time loop actually is the Lord Ravager's memories, not just a collection of a bunch of memories. The Lord Ravager probably ascended from somewhere, a planet that functioned exactly like Amphorius with titans and everything. And the story that we're actually witnessing probably did play out similarly, which is why this time loop can actually work to imprison a Lord Ravager, which is Fineon, because they're actually Finon's legitimate memories. Every single emanator and eon started out somewhere. They were somebody or something before they became an emanator or eon. Emporius is more than likely the memories of the earlier days of this emanator of destruction, Finon's legitimate childhood, Ides Elysia, and his childhood friend, Cyrene, and everything that he experiences, which makes it so much more real. It's a massive psychological memory prison for this Lord Ravager, which is why Fineon starts to go a little bit crazy and mad towards the end of each cycle like we've seen in 3.3. The Flame Reaver is his fragmented other side from a different cycle, probably trying to end the cycle by claiming Kefali's core flame so he can end the cycle, but this unknowingly actually always resets the cycle. An incredibly genius box to put a Lord Ravager in. And what makes it even more of a genius prison is that Fineon himself isn't a necessarily evil person, even if he does become a Lord Ravager. That's something that some of you were commenting on my last video. What I actually meant to emphasize is that Fineon is the big hero of Amphorius. He is the chosen one everyone turns to, the deliverer who will usher in the new era, Era Nova. What this means is he's just going to restart the cycle again as Kefali. That's why young Fineon, in this flashback in 3.0, is Kefali. Then he abandons his core flame to the elders and people of Okama and continues his journey in the new cycle as Fineon. But I actually don't think he's evil even when he becomes a Lord Ravager, because he's going to be playable, but there's a lot of characters in this game that are a very gray area. They're not so cut and dry. Akron's another one, for example. And Akron's actually a good example because even she made a cameo in 3.2. Akron is an emanator of nihility that wants to kill nihility. There is a potential here that Fineon is an emanator of destruction and is against his own eon. This is a possibility and could be why Nanook is the third path here. Maybe Fineon is a threat to Nanook. This is something that's definitely not off the table. I do not believe Fineon to be just a pure evil character by any means. None of the eons are evil. Some of the paths are more destructive, no pun intended, and less ideal than others, like Nanook or Yaoshi of Abundance for example. They cause more harm than good, but eons are not driven from right and wrong. They just follow their path wholeheartedly. They're a manifestation of that ideal. And Erudition's involvement here is probably to introduce the Black Tide through the Scepter, which again guarantees that humans push to the brink where they have to claim a core flame and restart the process, strengthen Amphorius and its titans by creating new ones again and again. So overall, my hypothesis on this is that the Lord Ravager is in fact trapped within a memory time loop, but the memory of this time loop is that of the Lord Ravager, which makes it so much harder to distinguish what is real and what isn't. It would make it near impossible for even Fineon as a Lord Ravager to distinguish that he is actually imprisoned. A fragmented portion of himself is probably the only one that's aware, Fully being the architect with the help of News, and Cyrene, the emanator maintaining each cycle. Being an emanator of remembrance, we haven't really got to see what an emanator of remembrance is capable of. Maybe Cyrene was able to integrate herself within the loop. Part of Phainon's childhood of Ides Elysia, she gets killed every time, setting Phainon on his vengeful path to succeed within his own cycled imprisonment. It's genius. That would be the perfect display of an emanator of remembrance to me, and their true potential and powers to imprison a Lord Ravager, with the help of the anti-organic equation in the scepter, which was already hinted at by Screwlum in the memory bubbles we got at the end of 3.3. But then there's the other question. Why are we here then? If everything's hunky-dory and you got this Lord Ravager confined now, why are we here? What's the threat to Amphoreus? Well, the first threat is probably erudition. I think erudition's involvement here serves to help keep the box maintained, assisting fully in what Amphoreus is supposed to be. But that doesn't mean that erudition could be a double-edged sword here. We know there's been many references to Rupert, both the first and the second, of the mechanical wars. The anti-organic equation is a phenomenon in virus that was a threat to the entire universe. It's much more complicated than just controlling it within a memory box. And Rupert was a sentient being, a computer left in a trash heap, kind of like Ultron. That's the best example I can give. You can't really kill somebody outright like that, because they're not necessarily like a person, they're a program or a software. It's different. In my last few videos, I pointed out that Screwlum's probably referencing Polka Kakamond here, since she was present in every single mechanical wars. Anytime there's the anti-organic virus, the scepters, she makes an appearance and kills people. She's done this throughout the entire timeline through the use of the butterfly effect. She was the one that even killed Rupert the First, stabbed him right in the chest. And the game goes out of its way to show us Ligas with the big hole in his chest. A cosmic sentient program like Rupert could easily recode itself and take control of a new host or body. We also never got to see what Rupert's body originally looked like. Again, it's kind of like Ultron. If you've read any of the Avengers comics or watched the cartoon where Ultron is in the story, Ultron's basically impossible to completely wipe out or kill because as long as there's any kind of programs or internet or anything, he can always eventually survive and make his way back. It's essentially a near flawless AI system. It's hard to actually snuff out completely. They can always remain dormant till the right time. Perhaps erudition's involvement here with the scepter was to actually feed the Black Tide, helping the time loop and the imprisonment. But Rupert has somehow found his way into Amphoreus and is now sort of compromising it. This is a possibility and something I initially thought. Looking at the original trailer again, I thought of something else. Is it possible that there's another Lord Ravager here, threatening Pandora's box here? Because there are quite a few Lord Ravagers here, but there's one in particular that makes perfect sense to show up in Amphoreus. The Lord Ravagers are known for their unique qualities of destruction. Nanook doesn't just like destruction. Nanook is fascinated with different types of destruction, like Phantilia that destroys from within. Iron Tomb is technological, but there's a Lord Ravager that's more methodical and intelligent, a strategist. And the only detail we know about this Lord Ravager is that they're a chess player. Obviously, chess is a big game of strategy, reading your opponent, making the right move. And Amphoreus, as we already know, is a very peculiar place, manifested through time and memory and erudition. What better Lord Ravager to try to compromise Amphoreus than the chess player? And look at that, in the original trailer, it is even teased. What if this mysterious chess player Lord Ravager is trying to break Fineon free from being imprisoned within their own mind and memory, trapped in a time loop? I can think of no better person to do it than this Lord Ravager, which is why Black Swan and the Remembrance need our help. I'm not going to go into crazy detail again on which Lord Ravager I think Fineon will become. I already went over in detail on my last video. I think it's going to be Sun Devourer. Could be one of the other ones like Zephyro. Honestly, Fineon becoming Nanook of Destruction isn't even off the table. There's still a lot of references to that. And how cool would it be that this Lord Ravager chess player is the Emanator of Destruction everyone keeps referencing, but we keep assuming it's Fineon, and this chess player is responsible for the ascension of their own Eon they're an Emanator of, through the scepters, the anti-organic equation, time, and memory. would be a crazy cool twist and plot point. Honestly, that would be nuts. I'm not banking on that outcome by any means, but I just thought it was worth mentioning because it's definitely a possibility. The more likely outcome is that this is in fact a prison for Lord Ravager, Fineon, created by Fully, maintained by the Emanator of Remembrance. The other Emanator level power that Herta mentions is more than likely the Lord Ravager, obviously, but the third one is gotta be Ligus or Erudition. She mentions 3 people specifically. Don't think she's mentioning herself or Herta because there's this firewall that Ligus is putting up that Herta and Skrullum cannot crack yet. It's safeguarding Amphoreus. So Herta's probably mentioning Ligus, or maybe even Rupert if Rupert's behind Ligus all along. That would definitely warrant an Emanator level power of Erudition. Cyrene then being the Remembrance Emanator level power, and then, well, Fineon as the Lord Ravager. 3.4, I think it's pretty obvious with Fineon becoming a playable character. We're going to get to see the end of a cycle, Era Nova ushered in. Fineon's going to become Kefali, the new cycle and new era is going to start. Rinse and repeat. He's starting to accept the fact that there's never going to be a happy ending. I think he's going to completely snap and lose it. We're going to get to see him manifest into the Emanator that he truly is. But then we're going to get to see this cycle restart. And that's what I think 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6 are going to be. Replaying Amphoreus' cycle, but if you recall, when we got to Amphoreus in 3.3, we were already towards the end of one current cycle. The Black Tide had pretty much engulfed most of Amphoreus, and 6 of the core flames were already claimed. I think the next few chapters we're going to get to play as the last cycle or the new cycle, and we're going to actually get to meet those titans we never got to already, like the Ocean, the Earth Titan, the Titan of Justice, and I think that's how we're going to actually meet the remaining mysterious flame chasers that were teased, but we don't actually know what they look like. Because obviously we have yet to see how these titans and core flames were claimed by these unknown flame chasers. I think in 3.4 the loop is going to be reset yet again. And much like how the Flame Reaver was wreaking havoc, I think this current version of Fineon might be wreaking havoc in the next cycle as the Flame Reaver, or something to that effect. While we have a new Fineon that we'll be introduced to eventually, with his whole tragic backstory of Ides Elysia starting all over again, and our current Fineon jumping over to the new cycle, realizing that Cyrene is the Emanator of Remembrance, maintaining this prison, tries to kill her, which then reinforces the new Fineon we'll meet to continue this journey on his big hero quest. That's where I see this story going. From here on out, I think it's genius, I love it. It leaves us with so many questions, theories, and possibilities. Again, I've loved reading your guys' comments about this too, because everyone has their own little tweaks and takes on how this is gonna go, and nobody's wrong. And that's the beauty of it. There's so many possibilities and different outcomes that could happen. I have to admit, Emporius might have had a slow start in 3.0 and 3.1, world building, introducing us to the concept of Amphoreus and the characters, but as it's ramped up here, it has not disappointed. Finally, before I wrap up the video, I want to actually reference a comment from my last video. I don't necessarily think this is true, but I thought it was such an interesting comment that it was worth mentioning anyway. Since it was an interesting concept, and I guess at the end of the day, there's always a slight possibility it could be true. And the comment stated that Amphoreus was the perfect incubator to create a Lord Ravager. And I remember reading that and I'm like, holy shit, Amphoreus in its entire design, how it actually functions as this box, is the perfect, flawless atmosphere to incubate a Lord Ravager. Just in case you're not familiar what an incubator is exactly, it's an enclosed apparatus providing a controlled environment for the care and protection for a premature or small baby, whatever you're trying to grow or raise. You're providing the perfect little enclosed environment for it. And if you think of Fineon and who he is, everything we've learned about Fineon and everything the devs have tried to show us about Fineon, the most imperfect, perfect human, it actually makes sense. You're sticking him in this box time loop with constant tragedy after tragedy. He's the most optimistic go-to hero. Everything that he does, though, doesn't matter. Everyone's going to eventually die. He's always going to fail. You're gonna make him repeat it over and over and over again, suffer his childhood trauma, his friends and family, village butchered. You're gonna give him just enough hope that he can make a difference, but by the end of each cycle, he's going to feel helpless, like it doesn't matter anymore. There's no happy ending, no paradise, everything's for naught. Everyone he knows and loves is going to die in the end, and he's gonna be the only one left to usher in the new era as the Deliverer, even going to have to fight other versions of himself to make this happen. And then it made me think, well, what if they're trying to throw us off? What if they want us to believe that this is Pandora's box as a prison, but what if it's actually an incubation for Fineon? And if so, why would Fully and Erudition team up on this? Well, that kind of brings me back to Acheron. What if they're trying to incubate a Lord Ravager that can take care of Nanook, fight fire with fire, take the most perfect hero, an export version of Kevin, stick him in a box and incubate him into being the most perfect personification of destruction? Because again, Fineon is going to be playable, and he's definitely not going to be all evil. Fully, News, and some emanators trying to incubate Fineon into becoming the ultimate force of destruction. But either Rupert has infiltrated Amphoreus through Ligas, like the crazy cynical AI program that they are, or Nanook and another Lord Ravager, this mysterious chess player probably, are trying to ruin their plans for Fineon. Disrupt the cycle, break it, smash the incubator so that this can never manifest, potentially making Fineon the first and really only emanator of destruction that's kind of a good guy. Maybe. Would be an interesting concept, because I don't think they're gonna make him playable if he's just an outright evil guy. I mean, for God's sakes, they're giving us a fill-in-the-blank for his name. It's Kevin! He's Kevin! Now, before I wrap up the video, one of the more frequent questions I get when talking about Emporius is, how does a Stellaron factor in here? And I'll be honest, this one's a tough one to answer. I'm not even sure, to be honest. Earlier on in 3.0 and 3.1, I thought maybe it had to do with the cycle, the Black Tide, or the core flames themselves, the Titans are compromised, but I honestly really don't think any of those are true. The explanation that made the most sense up to this point was the Black Tide. The Stellarons are the main MacGuffin of Honkai Star Rail, the cancer of all worlds. But now with the Scepter, the anti-organic equation, and Rupert introduced as a major component to Emporius, I don't know, the Stellaron just seems less likely for the Black Tide. But like we talked about in the video, if the Scepter itself acts as like a deliberate controlled doomsday device for this cycle and loop, manifesting the Black Tide, what if the Stellaron itself has compromised the Scepter, changing the parameters of what Emporius is supposed to be, hence why Black Swan needs us here, since the Trailblazers always seem to be the go-to people to help any world in the crisis of a Stellaron. That's the only explanation that kinda makes sense, because even the Scepters themselves function as a branch or extension of Rupert and Erudition itself, and the Stellarons are known to be somewhat of an intelligent thing. Just look how the Stellaron was able to corrupt Cocolia all the way back on Eurillo 6. It was able to manipulate Cocolia and actually just talk to her. So maybe the Scepters served a purpose, but now they've been compromised by a Stellaron. That's the only explanation that makes sense for me right now. Otherwise, I'm kinda hoping that a Stellaron isn't at play. Because Amphoreus is such a unique case for a new world, I'm kinda hoping they don't just fall back on a Stellaron being the main problem all along. The way that they've built Emporius, its world building, its lore, personally I'd like to see a Stellaron not the root cause. But that's my best guess based off what we have right now. I guess only time will tell. But those are my thoughts on 3.3, a continuation of my last video. I wanted to go over some different possibilities here because Emporius is pretty well cracked wide open now. But by all means, let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you see this story progressing from here on out? What do you think's gonna happen? Do you agree with me? Do you partially agree? Definitely leave a comment and let me know, but thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy the video. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.